from 5050 Yonge Street in Toronto. This is the October meeting of the Special Education Advisory Committee for the Toronto District School Board. My name is David Lepofsky. I'm chair of the Special Education Advisory Committee. I'm also the representative for Ontario Parents of Visually Impaired Children on SEAC. Let's go around and identify ourselves. Richard, who are you?
I'm Richard Carter, representing the Down Syndrome Association of Toronto and the vice chair of SEAC. Nora?
Hi, I'm Nora Green. I'm Nora Green, and I represent Inclusion Action in Ontario.
Hi, Michelle Arts. I'm trustee for Ward 16 and trustee rep on this committee.
Hi, my name is Effie Stathopoulos, and I'm one of the centrally assigned principals for special education and inclusion.
Good evening, everyone. Andy Palmer is Superintendent for Special Education and Inclusion.
I'm Katia Palumbo. I'm a centrally assigned principal for Special Education and Inclusion.
Elizabeth Schaefer, centrally assigned principal, Special Education and Inclusion.
Everybody in the room?
Leo?
Sorry, Leo Lagnato for Autism Ontario.
Leanne Dixon, the Special Education Advisory Committee liaison.
And can you guide us through who's online?
I can't see any of the online participants, so if I think just go through, I can see them now, but if people want to just start.
Actually, Leanne, could you maybe help guide us?
Sure.
While we're getting this straight, I just want to highlight one thing that was gently stated, but congratulations to Nandi. Tell us what your new title is.
Thanks, David. Executive Superintendent of Special Education and Inclusion. So I'm here for a little longer.
Congratulations, and looking forward to continuing to work together.
Same here, David. Thanks so much.
Leanne?
Do you want me to introduce the people online? Or
You could
do
just
want
call them out individually by name and they can say who they are and who they
Okay.
represent.
Sure, Steve?
Hi, it's Steve Lynette. I represent Epilepsy Toronto.
Kirsten Doyle?
Kirsten Doyle, Learning Center 3 representative.
Tracy O'Regan?
Tracy O'Regan, representing Community Living Toronto.
Anne Blanchette?
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Anne Blanchette, and I'm the alternative representing Epilepsy Toronto.
And Narissa Hutchinson? And I'm just going to go on to Julia.
Hi everyone, my name is Julia and I'm representing the Learning Disabilities Association of Toronto.
John Paul?
Hi everyone, my name is John Paul Ngana, Community Rep Learning Center 2.
Trustee Hassan?
Good evening, everyone. Trustee Liban Hassan, Ward 6, York South Weston.
Alana Bell?
Hi, everyone. I'm Alana Bell. I'm representing ABC Ontario.
Elisa?
Hi, everyone. Elisa Chagpar, representing Easter Seals, Ontario.
Julie?
Hi, everyone. Julie Diamond, representing Autism Ontario.
Jordan?
Jordan Glass, representing Learning Center 2.
Beth?
Beth Dangerfield, representing CADAC, or Center for ADHD Awareness Canada.
And Isabella?
Hi, I'm Isabella Pruska Oldenhoff. I'm representing Learning Center 4.
And Diane?
Hi.
Those are all the members. There's a number of staff online as well.
Okay, thank you. Is Jessica online or?
No, she's not yet.
Okay, let me just announce, but she's unfortunately not with us. We have a new SEAC member, the alternate representative for the Association of Bright Children, Jessica Miklos, and we welcome her aboard. And when she's here, either in person or virtually, we'll welcome her again. For anyone watching at home, the members who you heard who belong to SEAC or appointed to serve on SEAC are all here as volunteers, and the staff members from TDSB are generously in allowing us to invade their evenings, and we're indebted to everyone for their time. Over to Richard for the land acknowledgement.
Thank you. Please join me for the land acknowledgement. Those that can rise, please do so. We acknowledge we reside on the lands of the Mississaugas of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat. We also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, as well as the importance of establishing and maintaining cultural safety through learning from Indigenous peoples and perspectives. Thank you.
Thank you. Preliminary matters. Anybody have a conflict of interest to declare? Please state so or raise your hand and let me know if anybody does.
I'm not seeing any hands.
If not, motion to approve the agenda. Anybody want to bring that motion? I'm looking at Leo.
Yeah, I can move that.
Okay. Leo, do we have a seconder? I'm just having trouble seeing any, no hands are showing up online here. Do we have a seconder for the, Nora? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Approval of the minutes of our September meeting. They've been circulated. There was no requests to amend them previously. If there are any concerns, raise them now. If not, can we, or even if so, can we have a motion to approve the minutes? And if we're having trouble seeing people online, I'm going to put Leo and Nora to work just so we're sure we can move quickly and not out of disrespect for people online.
I do have visibility now. I see Julie Diamond with her hand up. Is
Very good. Julie, thank you.
No, sorry, that was just, I forgot to lower it. That was just to approve
okay.
the last. I'll remove it.
Do we have anyone who wants to move the minutes to be approved? I see Nora and Leo, seconded. All in favor? Any opposed, please raise your hands. Seeing no hands, carried.
Now, diving into the agenda, I just want to talk about a couple of preliminary things, and then we're going to get, including the first substantive agenda item, which rests with me in any event. This will be quick. First, with respect to the motion that TDSB passed that SEAC passed last June, we passed a motion, for the benefit of those who are new or watching and aren't familiar with this, last June, after extensive work where we asked the board to make a priority of effectively informing parents and guardians of students with disabilities and special education needs of what's available for them at TDSB and how to access it. And SEAC passed that motion. On the 25th of September, I appeared before the Program and School Services Committee of the Toronto District School Board to present that motion. I argued in favor of it. I've sent to SEAC members a link, which is available publicly, to that part of the discussion. The members of the board of the trustees who asked questions were quite supportive and receptive. However, the motion that was passed at the end was simply referring this back to staff. We were concerned that we would like more than just have it referred back to staff, not out of any disrespect for staff, but because this issue was always with staff, that really doesn't change anything. So I've asked to appear before all the trustees at their monthly meeting, and I will be doing so tomorrow night. It will be available on the live stream. The meeting starts at 7:30. I'm told I think I'm relatively early in the agenda, but it's hard to know, and obviously things can change. I've submitted a report or a submission, which is basically the same as what I submitted last month to the Program and School Services Committee, explaining our efforts on this and why we'd like this passed. Now, hopeful news is that last Friday, the kindergarten to grade 12 working group, from which this motion emanated, a subcommittee within SEAC, had its regular meeting, and it was attended by the staff who normally attend, but also by Executive Superintendent for Special Education, Nandy Palmer, and Associate Director of the Board, Luis Sarisco. And we had a good discussion. We essentially were repeating what we've asked for before, and there was some positive indication of some movement, and we're appreciative of that. What our effort is tomorrow is to really get the board to set a priority in this area at the board level, at the trustees level, and hopefully that can get more staff support if possible, or other resources to assist the staff who work with us. So that's the state of the art on that item. The only other item, and by the way, the presentation I made to SEAC to the Program and School Services Committee actually became a topic of discussion on CBC Radio, which I happen to be doing an interview on the next day. So our activities and our advocacy efforts reached province-wide radio on the 26th of September, which is, I think, helpful for all of us and shows our efforts are getting some positive attention. The other thing I wanted to just raise is just a brief procedural point and a request. Ordinarily, our next election for board or for SEAC chair and vice chair would be next January. A number of people have asked me, at least a couple of people asked me if I would serve again next year. Now, obviously, it's a vote of all of SEAC, and other people are totally free to run for it. But I determined that I would be willing to serve again. I'm going to be traveling next January on the date set for the SEAC meeting. So I wanted to ask if it would be agreeable to SEAC that we hold the election for next year's chair and vice chair in December. We've done this once before, actually to accommodate me back in 2016 or 2015, I can't remember which, but in any event, I'm going to ask if that was possible. Of course, if anybody wants to run, please feel free. If you've got questions about what the chair's role involves, please reach out to me, and I'm happy to describe it to you. But it is my intention to offer to serve for a second year, and my view is it'll be a second year, and then I'm going to want to make sure we have, if elected, that we have somebody else who's going to take it on after that year. So I'm wondering if I could entertain a motion, and then any discussion if we need it, on moving the vote for chair to December instead of January.
I see Nora's hand up, moving the motion. Leo seconding it. Does anybody have any questions? I know I do have one. I'm looking for hands, though, to see if anybody else has questions. Just in terms of procedural question, David, would we do that election at the start of the meeting, of the December meeting, at the end of the December meeting, so that we would carry on through for this year as the current chair and vice chair?
Our usual practice is to do at the start of the meeting. It really doesn't matter to me. I'll be ready to chair the meeting if we need to, and if it may be more efficient if we've got a bunch of things that work in progress to do it that way, but I'm not, it doesn't matter.
I think Nandy has her hand.
I have a question.
Oh, sorry, go
Sure.
ahead.
Jean-Paul.
Sorry, thanks to Mr. Chair. I don't know why we bringing forward that motion now for the election. I don't understand exactly the rationale. I mean, if it's that, maybe we can, you brought this up. I mean, you share your wish with us, David. I think we can. There's no rush. We can come back. We can bring a motion maybe next month. Leaving. You said that already, and let people think about it before we bring motion to either to advance the election for December rather than January.
The reason I was bringing it up now, a good point, Jean-Paul. The reason I'm bringing it up now is because our November meeting, as we'll be discussing later in this meeting, is going to be entirely taken up with a town hall. We will only have a couple of minutes at the very start where we have our formal convening of the meeting and approval of the minutes from this meeting. And then we were going to immediately, we'll have people attending both online and in person, and we don't want to hold them up while we have procedural discussions. So I thought it was appropriate to deal with it now. If it's not the will of the committee to move it, then that's fine, and I will deal with the consequences. If it is the will of the committee, we've got a motion, and I'm going to ask that we discuss it and then have a vote on it. Other questions or comments?
I'm looking online, looking for hands. I don't see any hands at this point.
So let's have the vote.
My only question again was, could we push it to the end of the December meeting and not at the start?
Yeah, I think we could talk about it and figure out how logistically to do that. It would probably make sense to do that, but we want to make sure there's enough time for it. We can certainly do it in the middle, if not towards the end. But let's have the vote about whether it will take place in December, then we can sort out in our agenda setting meeting how the agenda will work.
So if I can just remind people, if you're an alternate not replacing somebody, you don't vote. And you can vote with your hand raised both online and in the boardroom.
So for those that are in the boardroom, maybe we'll raise our hands so we can see that. And those online, if we can see your hand, please use the reaction, raise your hand, so Leanne can do the count.
All in favor?
All in favor, please raise your hand. We have three.
Just 1 second. I'm having trouble finding one. This is Isabella speaking. I am in favor, but I can't find the hand on my Zoom. Sorry.
Should be at the
Alt-Y will raise your hand.
Alt-Y. Okay, thank you.
That's a blindness trick. Everybody could use it.
Alt-Y.
We have three in the room. David not voting unless there was a tie. And how many did you see online, Leanne?
9.
Am I counting 9 online plus the 3 in the room?
9 plus 3 is 12.
So how many are voting yes?
12 are voting
9.
yes.
All right.
Yes.
Opposed, if any?
Please, everybody lower their hand that's voted yes now. The board is clear. Do we have any? Oh, I see 2 hands still up. Okay. Anybody opposed? Please raise your hand in the room or online. I'm not seeing any hands opposed.
All right. Motion carries. And by the way, and we could talk about this later, but there is sense in having the vote at the end of the meeting, because otherwise, if a chair steps in who wasn't sure if they would be chair, then they've got to chair a meeting that somebody else organized. And I've done it before. It's not the easiest thing to do. It can be done. All right, thank you very much. Let's now proceed to the next agenda item, if we can, unless there are any other questions about anything that I've just raised so far.
Not seeing any hands up in the room or online with questions.
All right, then let us proceed to the next item, which is the motion which has been circulated to everybody from the K-12 working group. Let me just explain, and Leanne, if you can share it on the screen for the benefit of everyone, and I'm going to give a quick summary of this. The K-12 working group has done some work on the area of what do parents or guardians of children with disabilities or special ed needs do if they think their child needs some support or accommodation or service that the board, they think the board has not provided or has not agreed to provide. There needs to be a fair, swift process for dealing with that. We discussed it and felt that there was a need for improvement. In our June meeting, staff provided a very helpful presentation on the two avenues that are available. One is the Concerned Parents Protocol, which emanates from the province. It's not legislated. It's not statutorily obligatory. It's something the province has provided for in its policy memoranda to boards. And it's a process where you can take your concern to the teacher, and if not successful, to the principal, and if not, to the superintendent, and so on up the hierarchy. And it is the same process that parents are to use, whatever their concern, whether it's disability or special ed related, whether it's something serious like you won't let my child come to school, or something more pedestrian like my kid didn't get on the soccer team they wanted to get on. And I don't mean that to trivialize soccer team issues, but I'm saying it's an avenue available to everyone. It's not focused on, designed for, or tailored to the needs of students with disabilities and special education needs. The other avenue is to file a complaint with the school board's human rights office. And the discussion at this table in June was to learn more about it, and in our September meeting was to give feedback about the need for some reform. So the K-12 working group took this back and crystallized that in the form of a recommendation. This is along the same theme of something SEAC recommended in June of 2016. Different wording, different focus, some common themes. It's also very much what the kindergarten to grade 12 standards committee appointed by the government of Ontario recommended almost 3 years ago. So the K-12, our K-12 working group took all of that together, put together a motion, which is on the screen, and I'm going to ask Leanne to read it out just for the benefit of those who might not read print and can't access it. And then I'm going to invite a mover, if there is, a seconder, and then discussion. And that discussion is an open opportunity to say if there are changes or concerns you have with it or whatever. And then we'll see if we're at a point where we can vote. And if we can't conclude that today, we will complete this at our December meeting. Leanne?
So I'm going to start with a recommendation that TDSB should establish a prompt, user-friendly, fair, and effective process for parents, guardians of students with disabilities, special education needs, to seek a resolution if they believe that TDSB is not providing an accommodation for their learning needs that would benefit the student. For example, if TDSB is not delivering on commitments in the student's individual education plan, or if TDSB has not agreed to provide an accommodation that the parent guardian believes that the student needs. 2, staff at TDSB who receive and address a complaint from a parent guardian of a student with disabilities, special education needs should A, have expertise and experience with education of students with disabilities, special education needs. B, be independent of those TDSB staff who have dealt with the student's needs in issue. C, have expertise and training in effective mediation, alternative dispute resolution. And D, have authority to direct any corrective action that they decide is needed.
And just to explain, the obvious question anyone might ask are two. One is, how is this different than what goes on now? And how do we square this with the procedures that are available at the board now? And the answer are these. It differs from what's available now because, for example, with a concerned parent protocol, after you go to the teacher and then the principal, which should still be the avenue where you start, you're going up to a superintendent who may not have and is not required to have the kind of expertise in the two areas that we identify. They're not necessarily specialists in education and accommodation of students with disabilities. They may be more generalists. They don't have necessarily, or we aren't sure that they will have, training on mediation and alternate dispute resolution. This is not meant to be a criticism. It's just not necessarily what they needed to have to get that job as superintendent. Third, they're on the hierarchy. They supervise directly the people who are making the decision that's under review. They may have had some part in it. They're not independent. And finally, the superintendent can direct certain things to happen, can say, you know what, I think the parents are right. Principal, please do X, or teacher, please do Y. But they cannot themselves direct things that the student may need, but which are not something that are within the resources of the school itself. So it's not identical or similar to the status quo. So the other question is, how do you square this with the concerned parents protocol? This is my last comment. Might be concerned that, hey, the province said to use the concerned parents protocol. That didn't mean that the province said you can't do anything else specialized to meet certain kids' needs. It's not like it's legislated, mandatory, you may not do anything else. And so it's quite possible to have a process like what we're describing, and yet do it in a way where it is going to people who this is all they deal with, not all the other kind of complaints that may come up, where it is independent, it's a big school board, and where it goes to people with the specialized expertise, and where the people it goes to have the authority to direct corrective action if they decide it's needed. That's the difference. With that, and finally, this resolution leaves it open to the staff to design this in a myriad of different ways. We're not designing it for them. If we have to take this to the trustees, we're setting a general principle. The staff can figure out the details. So that's what it provides. So that's the motion. Did we have a mover? I don't think we did.
No, it's only been read. The motion.
So the motion's been read. Could we have a mover and a seconder to get this on the table? And then let's open it to discussion.
I was going to say, online, do we have a mover? Lisa, have you moved to the motion?
Yes.
Okay, so we have Lisa moving the motion, Leo seconding the motion. Okay, so at this point, we will take a vote.
No, we're going to have discussion.
Discussion
No,
first. Sorry, my
discussion.
apologies. Yep.
Wide
Discussion.
open.
Okay, anybody wants to raise their hand that has a question? We'll begin a speaker's
Or
list.
comment.
Seeing no questions or comments, hands in the room. Anybody online have any comments? Oh. Do we have anybody online that would like to raise their hand, comment? We have trustee Arts would like to make a comment, so let's start with trustee Arts.
So there's a lot of points in there. I read it through a couple times, and what is written here is the process that already exists. So superintendent is the process that already exists. So this is the process of the parent concern protocol. Superintendents do have the training that is listed here. especially in dispute resolution and mediation. The ones that I've worked with are also trained in special education, maybe not as much as Nandy is with her experience at the ministry and stuff. But and in terms of the parent concern protocol, like in my ward, the superintendent has been the person when the protocol's been engaged or there's been parents looking for more, the superintendent's actually been the one who's the advocate at that level to help. Superintendents are not, the structure is not that they're the boss of principals. Principals are the managers of the schools. Superintendents support schools in a certain area, but they're not their boss to tell them what to do. They're there as a support, and then they take care of some of the organizational management that is at the system level. So what I'm seeing here is maybe a communication issue, that when parents are going through, and then different stages of this are part of the IPRC process and the back and forth and the collaborative process that is supposed to be within the an IEP development or an IPRC process. So what I would say I'm seeing here is that as families are going through these processes, they also need information given at the same time on the parent concern process, on appeals process. We also have a new procedure for the the IPRC appeals process. I'm sorry, I don't know off the top of my head the number for that procedure. But that was just developed because the existing process was not from the ministry, was poorly defined, and we needed better definition and protocols.
Okay, Nora has her hand up, and
Leo and then myself.
And Leo, and then Richard. I just want to respond to Trustee Arts. I'm going to respectfully disagree on a number of points. The first is saying that, you know, there's a process for working collaboratively on the IEP. That's true, but what we're proposing kicks in when, after that collaborative process, the school board has not agreed to put something in the IEP or otherwise to provide something that the parent thinks they need. Now, they could go to the Human Rights Tribunal, but that's years, huge expense, litigation costs, and adversarial. And the idea here is to provide an avenue that will be more expert and more expeditious. Similarly, it's for parents who say, yeah, we agreed on the IEP, but you're not delivering. We think, and they may be wrong, but it is their belief that the board is not delivering what the IEP promises. So the collaborative process of developing an IEP to which you referred, and which is very important, is absolutely no replacement for what we're proposing. With respect to this being the process that already exists, I will tell you the concern, of course, the Concerned Parents Protocol has been around for a long time. I had the privilege of sitting on the kindergarten to grade 12 Standards Development Committee that the province appointed. Half of the members were from disability community and organizations. The other half were from school boards. And there was overwhelming support for the need for this kind of reform. So there was a shared view based on province-wide experience that this is needed. And finally, I would suggest that the one key ingredient, it may be two other quick things. You'd said that the superintendent's not the boss. This is a very hierarchical school board, in my experience, and I suspect in the experience of many. And it is and there is very much a sense of a hierarchy of responsibility and authority. And the superintendent over the principal, may be there to support, may be there to help, but is also the supervisor. I mean, that's the superintendent. And they don't have, and finally, they don't have the authority to order all the remedies that if a student, a parent believes that their deaf child needs more support from deaf and hard of hearing services than they're getting, the superintendent can call and ask, but they don't have authority to direct an outcome, even if they think it's needed. And so the whole idea here is having a recourse that works in cases where it's needed. Anyway, as with everybody, we're all welcome to take differing views, but I wanted to just respond because you've offered very thorough reasons why you think this is being done, with which I respectfully take a different view. Nora.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess I have a few. I would have similar concerns to the ones you've stated, David. I think the central team's working really hard to try and make sure superintendents do have information about the programs, but I think that's a never-ending, ongoing work for them. Because when you think about the duty to accommodate, which explicitly states that it's individualized, and when you have that many thousands of students and you're customizing, there's no one pattern of accommodation. And I think boards very often rely on patterns and structures and common responses, but under the Human Rights Code, each individual child's case is viewed differently and individually. And I don't know that superintendents probably have a rich enough knowledge and disability to be able to manage those kinds of things. I think they rely pretty heavily on calling back to central staff. That's been my experience anyways, that they're calling and asking central staff to support them with that thing. I don't, and I think the ability for central staff to manage that while they're simultaneously trying to put structures in place, doing anti-ableism, anti-racism, anti-oppressive work, while they're trying to staff their schools, while they're literally, in my personal and professional experience, they are the knowledge keepers of anything to do with disability, and they are doing that on top of jobs that other people in other fields don't have to do. So if you're in curriculum, you don't have to do this to the same degree that special education has to do it. So to take that burden off the central staff so they can operate and focus on moving forward as opposed to individual case-by-case situations that can be a lot of work for them, I think is really important to try and bring some stability to the system. And it's just been my experience that it's also a different thing to say what's on paper and what's delivered consistently. And, we know some of the reasons why services aren't delivered consistently, and lots of that's about supply shortage and well-being of staff and all those kinds of things. But the bottom line is it can result in a child's IEP not being implemented. It may look great on paper, but it's not happening. And so I think in order to support staff so that they can do proactive work, so they can be thinking forward and making things smoother and more effective for our kids, I think it's important to have a different separate body that's about this.
Okay, thank you, Nora. Next on the list is Leo.
Thanks, Richard. I think that what is being proposed, in my view, is actually very welcome, and it's if you can see it as a one-stop shop ombudsman-like approach, as an alternative to a system today that's diluted and inefficient. Do you know who the information line is today when parents have questions? We are, all the associations who are sitting here. Autism Ontario gets calls every week to guide parents that are lost, parents whose principal gave them incorrect information, parents who have been failed by the parent concern protocol. I speak to them every week, every single week. This motion is very welcome. The failure of your protocol has outsourced the workload to our associations, which, by the way, are charities, and left many parents completely clueless about what to do. So I fully support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo. I'm going to ask Anne to go next, and I'll move myself down the list.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to say we have lived experience with this protocol. or the current protocol in place, and it absolutely is inefficient. And in our family's case, it ended up in a whole year loss of learning for my child because they could not accommodate them with the IEP or write even a correct IEP according to the ministry guidelines for him. And we had everybody involved in the case, and nothing was resolved. We did not get any written information as to why they could not implement what was happening. We were just told at the end of it that we were problem parents, and that because we were advocating, asking them to do their job and follow the Ministry of Education guidelines, we were actually the problem. And so we ended up having to go to the Ontario Human Rights Tribunal to get issues and complaints addressed, which still was not addressed to our satisfaction. And we never received any sort of written material from the school board as to why our son's accommodations could not be put in place, why he had a whole year of loss of learning, or any even resolution to help him get caught up in his learning. We were told just to hire a tutor. So it was a very disappointing process, and it took well over a year of our lives and our son's lives, and it resulted in him being a year behind in his studies on top of his disability and his complex medical problems that he has. So while this protocol works well on paper, and there's a lot of great TDSB protocols, the problem is that they're not followed, and that needs to be addressed. So I think this is a fantastic way to do that, and I appreciate everybody's work here, and I just wanted to say that. And I really appreciate the fact that it says there has to be like short timelines and written reasons so that parents aren't left in the dark and made to feel that they're the problem for a system that is overburdened and does not work. Thank you.
Okay, we have Bronwyn next on the list, and then after Bronwyn will be myself, and then over to David.
Thank you. I fully support the motion, and I fully agree with what Leo said. As organizations, we are constantly getting calls where families are lost. They're not getting any answers because it's so complex and challenging to navigate how to understand, to advocate for your child properly within the TDSB. And also contacting human rights, just so you know, I was working with a family recently this week, and automatically the response is that they are overwhelmed, they cannot respond. I haven't received any notification back from them. It just bounces back. How is that supposed to be reassuring for those families who are taking those steps to complain to human rights and absolutely getting absolutely no response, but just an automated email? That it's ridiculous, it's insufficient, and I feel for you in the TDSB that you're overwhelmed, you don't know how to handle it, but you have to listen to us, that this is not working, and let us in to work with you to come up with solutions that are going to be effective long term.
Thank you. And finally, Richard.
Okay, thank you, David. So I guess continuing on where Trustee Arts covered in the process, it sounds like there's definitely a disconnect between the existing process, and because of that, this is being suggested as a fix or an additional process. I guess my question is there any fix to the existing process? And looking at, like, under item 2, part D, have the authority to direct any corrective action that they decide is needed. I know that was brought up already. From staff's perspective, is this implementable as it's written here? And I see Nandy with her hand up. Thank you. Nandy?
Thanks, Richard. So SEAC members, of course, will vote how they'd like to vote on the motion, but I just want to offer some information that might be helpful aside from this motion. And in June of 2024, the ministry introduced BPM 170, which outlines requirements for school districts to on how to communicate with parents, 1. 2, how to strengthen service standards and ensure consistent and reliable information is provided and made available for parents, and greater transparency and accountability in education systems across the province. And so we currently in the TDSB are in the process, Richard, to answer your question, of reviewing our existing protocols to identify where they do not align with the requirements of PPM 170 and to bolster those pieces that may not align. So that work is underway, and if we're hearing feedback that the parent concern protocol is not working efficiently, then that is part of the work under this PPM to look at what needs to be done differently. So all that to say that there is work, and it is being guided by this PPM that came out in June 2024 in this area that we're currently under. And under the PPM as well, community advisory committees, including SEAC, would be consulted on and sought feedback from. Thanks.
I'm going to defer you if you don't mind, because we're 5 minutes into Craig Snyder's time. Is Craig online?
I just wanted to say, we got that survey that Nandy's talking
Oh, pardon me? Yeah,
about. We
did.
received the survey Nandy
Yeah,
was talking.
and just to wrap this up, and then we can, I'm going to call the vote. This motion, 2 points. Number one, this motion can be part of our feedback. You're of course welcome to give more, but if they're looking afresh at their processes, what better time for us to give our advice than now? And second, I encourage us all to think of this as a flexible process. We're laying out in this motion, should it be passed, what we think families of students with special ed needs and disabilities need as a fair process. We lay that out, the board takes it back, and they can look at what they're doing now and take it into account, hopefully, in making things better. With that, I'd like to call the vote. Richard.
Okay, so at this point, we are going to, you know the motion, it has been read out, it has been discussed, questions and answers. At this point, I would ask for those in favor of the motion to raise their hand electronically, online, and physically in the room. So we're looking for a motion to, or a vote to pass this motion or fail this motion.
So vote.
So we're just counting online right now. 7,
vote with your hand.
8, 9, 10 in the room. Or do we have any more online votes? So it looks like we have 8 online.
And in the room we have?
And in the room we have 2 at the moment. I have not positioned myself yet. How many do we need?
It's 9 plus 1, 10.
Excuse me, how many do we need?
Sorry, we need 10.
To-
We have 18, which is 9, and to pass, it needs to be 9 plus 1.
And so we do have 10, do we not?
Yep.
Yep, we have 10. 8 online and 2 in the room.
Okay, opposed if any, or do you want to
Okay.
vote?
Yeah, we'll let people drop their hands now online and see if anybody is opposed.
Don't usually do opposed.
No, okay, you've passed anyways.
Passes.
Yeah, it's passed.
It's passed,
It
that's
passes.
fine. All right, thank you very much. By the way, just before we jump to Craig, a quick announcement. At our September, one of the priority areas we've identified for the school board over this year, when senior staff asked Richard and I to draw on all the feedback and identify, one of the areas was exclusion of students from school, either for all of the day or part of the day. I've asked Nandy if we could get an update on what the policy and what the numbers are for both, and she's asked if the staff could have till the December meeting to do that. And I said that's totally reasonable, so stay tuned for our December meeting and we will be turning our attention. Now, Craig is online?
Yes.
Okay, we want to welcome back our Associate Director Craig Snyder, the guy with the avatar is the guy with the money, or who's trying to get the money. However, we're taking a different approach today. In the past, he's come in the spring to explain the techniques, the technical procedures of the budgeting process, and then to go over the numbers that are being proposed. Our obligation, our mandate under the special education regulations as the Special Education Advisory Committee is to give our input into what the special education budget should be. And so I've asked Craig to attend in a listening role today and to invite you to give any feedback you want. And we're doing it now in October because he's working on the budget now that will be coming forward in February and March. So what I'd like you to do, what I want to invite you to do is to go around the table now. We've got him till about 8 o'clock, and we can have him come back again later if needed. And just give your input. What do you think? And it doesn't have to be dollar input, but what do you think the priorities should be from the perspective of the students whose needs we represent? And so, Richard, if you want to take a speakers list.
I'm looking for hands in the room. I see Leo. No other hand. Laura's hand in the room. Do we have anybody online? I see no hands online.
Sorry, Richard and David, before we start taking feedback, I think Craig wanted to take a couple of minutes just to share something with SEAC.
Okay, that's fine.
I see his hand now. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. Meanwhile, folks online, this is your chance to have your say. So start thinking of questions. Craig, go for it. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and good evening, SEAC. So I came tonight to listen. I'm more than happy to do that, but there has been an event that happened on Friday that I want to make you aware of. So on Friday, the Ministry of Education released their 25-26 education funding engagement guide, and I believe a copy is attached to your minutes tonight. So as usual, the Ministry of Education at this time of year usually asks for feedback from the sector on concerns and issues they would like us to, or they'd like to think about as they build the funding model for next year. And as always, they have certain areas of focus they're interested in, but they also ask school boards for anything they would like to add to that. This year, the 5 areas they have questions are the core education funding model reform. And as you're aware, this is the first year of the new funding model, so they're, I think, looking for feedback on that. They are looking for special education funding information. I'll come to that in a moment. They're looking for efficiencies and reducing administrative burden. They're looking at community use of schools, and they're looking at student safety and well-being. And the document, when you have a chance to read it, outlines in detail what they're looking for in those areas. In the special ed, just at a summary level, there's basically 3 considerations, and I won't go read them verbatim, but one is around prioritization of resources. One is around, is there any changes to the funding for special education, but not looking at new funding, but there's different ways it should be administered. And then one's around a question around reporting. And so what we're thinking of doing is as follows. So tonight, obviously, we sent an email out to our trustees this afternoon with this timeline as our suggested timeline. Because of it due back to the ministry on November 8th. So tonight, as I just did a moment ago, we're presenting the document to you and looking for your feedback. We are going to do an email to all the advisory committees tomorrow, advising them and give them a copy of the document. And for both SEAC as well as all the other advisory committees, we're asking for any feedback you have to the document by November 1st so that staff can work to do the final submission of the board based on the information we've thought about, as well as what considerations any of the advisory committees have submitted to us. We are going to, on October 22nd, present the report formally to the board at the FBAC meeting on October 22nd. We're also going to suggest areas outside of the 5 questions that we would like to address with the ministry around funding, and one, for example, will likely be around technology. October 29th is PX meeting, and we will extend the offer if they'd like us to come and present like we are to SEAC tonight. We're happy to do that. And as I said, we're looking at November 1st deadline to get feedback from our advisory committees as well as our trustees. And then staff will go about taking all those ideas and trying to write the final submission and submit it to the ministry on November 9th. So it's for consideration as they build the funding model for next year. We will report back to FBAC on their November 27th meeting and give them a copy of the submission that was submitted to the ministry for both for the public record as well as for our trustees. And this is somewhat of a similar process that occurred last year because the timelines were again tight last year. So that's kind of our timeline of what we're looking for. I won't go through the whole document, but it's there. You have a copy of it and you can read, and we're happy to take any feedback that you have on that through either a formal CX submission or as there's individual information people would like to share. So with that, Chair, I'm happy to turn it over to the table to hear and listen to your thoughts around the budget build. Last thing I'll say is that we are planning to take, and we're still working on the timeline, but we're planning to take to FBAC on the 22nd a budget development timeline for the year. Some of the key things that are as normal will be early March will be the special FBAC and board to approve the school-based staffing ahead of the March break. And then we're looking to submit our budget as required by statute on June 30th, the Ministry of Education. But the details within that we're still working on as to what will be submitted when and what the process will be, and that'll come to FBAC on October 22nd. And so I'll stop now and take any comments.
Thank you very much, Craig. And I'm looking at the time. Nora, Leo, can we do the town hall in 10 minutes rather than 20? I think we should be able to. Let's go to feedback to Craig on the budget.
Okay, and I have a speakers list here. Just before we do start with the speakers, please everyone keep in mind that the information that you're going to share tonight and provide to SEAC and to Craig and staff is generic information. We don't want you talking about specific schools and issues there and funding and et cetera. We want to keep it broad-based. So Leo, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Richard. As representative for Autism Ontario, I want to highlight the ongoing challenges faced by specifically two groups of parents within our community. And I'm obviously simplifying, but just to make it easy for us. One is those whose children require an intensive support program, an ISP setting, and those whose children are in mainstream classrooms. So these are very different groups, and we speak to both, and we represent both. For the first group, the parents of autistic children who would benefit from an ISP, I think the main issue that we hear from parents that call us is one of access. So despite their kids qualifying for these programs, many times they must engage in exhaustive advocacy efforts to secure placement. It feels as though barriers are almost intentionally placed, limiting access to services that should be readily available for those in needs. And it seems that these obstacles seem to arise from a supply and demand disconnect that could potentially be alleviated with increased funding to expand these essential ISP programs, right? So since there's not enough supply, the barriers come up, right? And the second group, which are the parents of autistic children in mainstream settings, they face a different, but it's yet equally critical issue, which is a lack of support. So these students are basically many times abandoned, the ones that we speak to. Many of them receive little to no access to educational assistance or other necessary accommodations that would help them succeed. And without adequate funding, these supports are out of reach, leaving students without the resources they need to fully participate in their education. So these kids, which might actually thrive in mainstream education, they end up being forced into an ISP, even if that's not the right setting for them, right? So these
Leo, we're going to keep people to 2 minutes each just because we've got a speaker's list.
I got it. Yeah. Thanks,
okay,
David.
Good stuff. Thank you, and I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, I have wrapped. That was my last.
All right.
Was my last phrase.
2 minutes. 2 minutes or less.
Oh.
Yes, Nora.
Craig, thank you so much for coming. I guess my big comment is I'm not sure how the committee would comment on this because we haven't really received any kind of service level data about how the kids are doing. So it gets, whatever data we have is on an old funding formula. We have nothing from a new funding formula. We haven't had staff present to talk about what they found challenging about trying to staff their schools or provide. I've heard rumors that SIA funding is problematic in the sense that they remove claims-based, and now possibly boards have a greater exposure for some equipment than they would have had the province been topping up. So I guess my standpoint, I can talk to the same thing as Leo does, which is kids are out of school, and why are kids still out of school? And kids are on modified day, and why are kids on modified day? So I still think there are kids that are actually not able to access their actual right to come to school. That would be our association's biggest worry right now. But I think other than that, like how kids are performing, what does EQAO look like, all that kind of data that would inform about how special education is doing, we wouldn't have any of that. So I think it's disingenuous of the ministry to ask you to ask us what to say. I understand you're under the timeline, but it's unrealistic. We would not, as a committee, be given the kind of data, and we've asked for it, like how much is going here, how much is going there. And we don't seem to get that breakdown. We get how much money we spend in very broad, high-level overview terms. We get whether it's sufficient or not, and that's it. We don't get any presentations on the details of the budget, really, for us to be informed enough to say, other than we know kids aren't coming.
Okay, and I want to, while Craig has asked for feedback on the provincial consultation, I'm going to invite everybody that's got feedback on that to send your feedback to Leanne directly, and she will forward all your feedback to Craig. What I'd like to focus the remaining time on is what we are asking Craig to try to secure in the budget of the TDSB this spring with respect to the needs of students with disabilities and special ed needs.
Okay, we have Ann next.
Ann?
Let's see, Toronto. Ann, please, go ahead.
And try to keep it to 2 minutes if you can. I apologize.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I just wanted to say one concerns that families often bring forward are the students with epilepsy or safety concerns. So if there's any wiggle room in terms of safety equipment, alerting when a child may have a seizure in the washroom, like some sort of safety alarm, something like that. And another thing, of course, is them being, needing more support in their learning and more education surrounding how epilepsy affects learning, and as well as the physical symptoms of the disease. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. And Jordan?
You're muted, Jordan.
Hi. Oh, no, I just unmuted. Okay. Absolutely. Thank you. So every year I feel like I've been talking about greater training for school bus drivers, and I understand the difficulty associated with that because of some of the outsourcing. But often parents tell me they have school bus drivers who don't know exactly how to work with their children's needs while on the bus. I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention some of the in-class supports that are needed. Certainly, we've seen supports getting cut in a funneling down sort of way from the ministry, but it's having an impact on our students in class. If we can at least put a dam on those, so that we're not losing supports in our frontline in class way for our students. I think we can consider that a moderate scale of a win. Thank you.
Thanks, Jordan. And lastly will be myself. I don't see any other hands raised.
And then me.
And then David. So really, two quick questions or comments to help us along here. Craig, where can we find the current TDSB 24-25 budget? Where can we get full access to those numbers and how it's spent? And the second question, basically, we've invested a lot of money in special education this year, past years, et cetera. And we heard from Jordan there about impacts on students of the budget. What about talking about some of the positive impacts and the return on investment? Where has the TDSB put money in special education, and they've reduced the cost of teaching students, and they've improved the outcomes of those students? What do we have for measurements showing that? And can we put that in the government's hands and say, look, we're doing good things with the money, and this is why we deserve more, because we're going to be able to deliver better services for less, but to we're going to fill in the gaps that we have now. Those would be my two comments. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And Craig, and I'll be the last speaker, and then we're going to thank you for coming. I've got a few points that I want to encourage you to take into account for the budget for next year. The first is that we've got to stop talking about budget for special education, because special education, as the term is used by the ministry, leaves out some kids with disabilities. It leaves out kids with mental health issues if they're not considered a behavior issue. It has left out kids with ADHD. We need to be talking about a TDSB budget for students with disabilities, and of course all others with special ed needs, but all disabilities, because that's who the school board has a legal duty to serve under the Charter of Rights and the Human Rights Code. And so, and all budgeting in the past has been in significant terms affected by exceptionalities and that kind of language, outdated language from the province, but we need to be a step ahead. Similarly, when you advocate to the province, they should be funding on that basis. The second thing is SEAC has been pressing staff for actions that we believe need to be taken. And one of the things we've witnessed with staff is that they are genuinely swamped. And I mean swamped. And I'm saying this when they're here at 8 at night. And so we're going to the board tomorrow, I'm going to the board tomorrow, to ask for the board to make a priority on behalf of SEAC of better informing parents of students with disabilities and special ed needs about what's available for them and how to access them. We can't just expect that of the staff as they are. They need more support, and that should be reflected in the budget. And so that's the second thing. The third thing I'm going to say, I've just got two more. Third thing I'm going to say is we need to budget for the built environment. Schools are largely inaccessible, and we don't have a system in place to ensure that new construction is. SEAC raised this 8 years ago. Well, that is, of the issues we raised, that's one that involves money. And the board, I wish the province gave you all that was needed when you build a capital project to cover this. But I've learned through the work on the Provincial Advisory Committee that they don't. So TDSB needs to address that. That needs to be addressed in the budget, or else we're going to end up with more new construction that is replete with potential disability barriers. Finally, as a representative for the Ontario Parents of Visually Impaired Children, I can tell you that we are understaffed in the area of blind low vision services. We've always been understaffed, and it's been a problem that even the positions we have don't necessarily get filled over long stretches. But we need more staff. The fact is, a blind child at TDSB could get as little as half the service that they would get, blind low vision specialized service that they would get at York Region. And that's inexcusable, especially since TDSB is the largest school for the blind in Canada. It has more blind students at it and low vision students than at the Ross Macdonald School for the Blind, possibly as many as double. I haven't seen the figures lately, but we need to address that, and it needs to be in the budget. And I am sure my colleagues, speaking from perspective of other disability areas, had time permitted, would be able to say the same about their needs areas. Anyway, thank you, Craig, very much. This has been easier for you because you're just listening, but we hope this is helpful for you.
No, thank you very much. And I wrote copious notes, and I will look at the recording of the meeting if I need to go further. I tried to catch as quickly as I could, but my hand started to cramp. But thank you for providing this feedback. And I look forward to any submissions or things you'd like us to address within the 25-26 funding education guide. And I appreciate all the feedback tonight. Have a great evening.
Take care. Thanks so
Thank
much. Okay, with less time than we otherwise expected, Nora and Leo, can you just brief everybody? This doesn't require any decisions. It's just for your information about how we are going about planning the November 4th town hall. And a huge thanks to staff who've been collaborating with us on this. Nora, Leo, take it away.
So we met as a subcommittee and staff kindly joined us, and there's going to be a flyer that provides families an opportunity to register to come on November 4th to what was scheduled as our committee meeting to share their lived experience within the system for those students who are receiving special education services. The flyer is going out through, my understanding is it's going to be on the board site. It's already there, right on. They are all over it. So it's going to be on the board site. There's a registration link that goes to a Google form that asks people to provide their name, some contact information, whether they need accommodations, whether they need translations, and people will be given that opportunity to speak to us directly. They've been given also an opportunity to present either in person or virtually. So all of us will be asked to break up into separate rooms. Hopefully many parents take the opportunity to reach out to us. Leo mentioned that many parents would not, or families might not want to speak directly to staff or do a live presentation. So there's also an opportunity for them to submit a recorded submission about their lived experience in any sort of format, be that video or artistic. That can be submitted to us and shared as well. The meeting will not be recorded, so families will not be recorded telling their stories, and so it wouldn't be posted to the public, but staff will be attending in all the breakout sessions to record notes and take, record like their own personal notes to share with us sort of lived experiences so we can understand what's happening in the system. Anything I forgot, Leo? Go, Leo.
Just wanted to add one thing, to request trustees who might be watching to help us spread the news. So I've already spoken to a few trustees. They have all accepted to put it in their newsletter that they send out to parents. And so I obviously have not spoken to all trustees. So those who I haven't spoken to, would be great if you could help us. We are circulating it with our own associations, but if we can get trustees to send it to the parents as well, that would help.
Yeah, so if we could really reach out to our organizations and find our families so that they can take this opportunity to share that. And the other thing would be that we're emphasizing the fact that this isn't a time where people are going to find personal navigation. So the staff aren't expected to respond to this in the moment to the situation. We're not promising that we're personal navigators, so that we're helping them manage the situation. This is for us to collect data about what the lived experience is receiving service in the TDSB right now. So that was on the notice, just to let families know in case they thought they were coming to find personal navigation. So I think it's important as we spread the word to also manage people's expectations about what will happen after they share.
Just a couple of things to add in, one of which is, Leanne, if it's possible to email to everybody on SEAC, maybe in Word and PDF, the actual brochure and the hyperlink to it in case people want to use the link instead. Anything you can do to spread the word. And as soon as I get it, I'm going to be tweeting or Xing or whatever you call it now. The other thing is that it would be really important. We're going to have the capacity, depending on how many people sign up, to have 2 rooms working here at 50-50 and 1 Zoom room. If more people sign up that we can accommodate in the 2 hours, we will consider holding another event next winter or spring. But we will also have 1 SEAC person chairing each of the groups. And we'd like the rest of you here or online to be in the room or the virtual room to that end as listening and as a chance to show your support. To that end, it would be great if more people could plan to attend in person. And if you could email Leanne if you think you can, so we could at least have a sense of numbers online, numbers in person from the SEAC side of the table. Nora, Leo?
Yeah, and I think the other thing that was really important that Leo thought of that I had forgotten is the staff have offered to make sure there's someone here that sort of has trauma-informed experience, because for some people telling those stories could be really powerful and influence other people. Oh, we can't do that? Nandy's got her hand up.
I had one quick question for Leo, and this would go back to staff actually. Leo mentioned you've only contacted so many trustees. Would I be correct to assume that this flyer would automatically be sent to all trustees?
Yes, please.
Is there a way to send a message, either Leanne or Nandy through your office, just to all trustees asking if they would post it?
Yeah.
That'd be great. And anybody through whatever networks you've got to get the word out. And we've also asked, and Andy, I think you folks are good on this about putting a couple of blurbs in TDSB Connects on this.
So we will be doing that, but when the next TDSB Connects is going out the day of the presentation, so it will be in that edition. I just wanted to flag that it will be going out on that day. However, it's already been posted on the TDSB website. So if anybody types in TDSB and they go to the main website, it's already there, and it's already been posted on our special education website as well, both external.
Okay, anything else?
And does anybody have any comments online? Anybody? Oh, Trustee Arts?
Could it be posted? I can't remember what the bulletin board is on the staff side that goes out every Monday.
Yeah, so we are posting it for staff as well on system leaders, but we're trying to get to community, which is why we targeted the public sites first. But yes, we're going to be putting it in system leaders and direct line.
Yeah, so as far as trustees, we're not consistent in when we send out our newsletters, when or how often. There's that. And then a lot of, like, I know a lot of the people that get my newsletter aren't in schools anymore. Like, they're, like, it's a fairly old list. Whereas my schools all send out, like through the administration, they all send out newsletters to their families, and they do that consistently, weekly or biweekly. So they have access to the system leaders board.
So Nandy, would there be a way to get this to principals with a note saying if they could possibly include it in their newsletters?
Yeah, that's what I just said, David. It'll be going into what we call our
Great.
system leaders weekly. Yeah.
All right, great.
Does it also go to the other community advisory committees? Would they receive this?
SEAC can send that, so Leanne on behalf of SEAC could send that.
Yeah, that'd be great. If you could, Leanne. Okay, fantastic. Thank you all very much. So we are on schedule to turn to Nandy for staff report.
Thank you, everyone. So we still are following where we're putting some items that it's been recommended on a monthly basis to report to SEACs about, and some of those are included in this month's leadership report. At the end of the day, as you can appreciate, when our staffing has been allocated to schools, how else do we support school-based staff? And a lot of that is through building capacity through professional learning, and that is a big focus of our work. And the leadership report outlines the focus of the professional learning that we will be engaging in with staff. It's very differentiated. It's based on needs, but it's also based on the goals outlined in our multi-year strategic plan. So they are listed there. Four main areas that we'll be looking at is truth and reconciliation, the calls to action, and the United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous Peoples, UNDRIP. And we'll be looking at culturally safe practices and trauma-informed practices. We'll be focusing on inclusion and specifically anti-ableism as part of anti-oppression and equity work and student well-being. We'll be focusing on learning conditions that exist in schools and classrooms for students with disabilities and special education needs, and on effective teaching practices that incorporate principles of universal design for learning, differentiated instruction, and culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy. Because we know that students with special education needs or disabilities and intersecting identities experience disability in a different way. We also will continue to focus as a department to create coherence and alignment of special education and inclusion practices, programs, and processes and structures across the TDSB in the areas of challenging and dismantling oppressive structures. We know that students from certain groups, such as Black and Indigenous students, are overrepresented in special education programs, capacity building through professional learning, which I previously mentioned, changing mindsets, and communication and engagement, which is a large part of the work that we do with SEAC. We've also listed, and I won't go through them, but professional learning that we've offered to staff at all levels, from superintendents to school administrators to teachers and support staff. And we've also given you a monthly breakdown of all of our professional learning sessions for September and October. So I'd really like to share, because this was a big deal for us. There was a parent engagement session held on September 24th in partnership with TDSB Parent Engagement and Community Support Workers, and 600, I want to get the exact number, it was over 646 parents, guardians, caregivers attended that session that focused on word level skills and language development. And what we've been trying to do with all of our parent engagement sessions is really focus on strategies that we use in the classroom that parents can take away and use at home to reinforce those strategies and the learning at home. I'm proud to share that we applied, as we do every year, for a number of ministry grants. For the first time this year, we actually have been given all four of our applications have been accepted, and we've been given 4 grants that we would be working on to remove barriers for students with disabilities. That's the name of the funding from the ministry. In years past, we have been given 2 or 3 grants, but this year all 4 of our applications were accepted, and they're listed there. I'm particularly excited about the work that we're going to be doing around looking at how we can provide post-21 transition support to students who leave TDSB after 21 years. Which brings me to the other item. I think I skipped it. I'm all over the place here a bit, so excuse me, because they kind of go together. So David, this is a shout out to you as well and your provincial work on the K-12 Education Standards Development Committee. We received, the ministry pushed out to all 72 school boards. The K-12 and post-secondary education standards development committees identified transitions as a potential organizational barrier for students with special education needs and disabilities, which included transitions into school, between schools, and out of secondary schools to post-secondary education, workplace, or community. And out of that work that was done at the provincial level, the ministry has funded school boards to create positions to do some work, and the positions are titled Transition Navigators. So we received a total of $646,000 roughly to support work in this area, and we've hired 4 transitions navigators which is a requirement of these funds, who will be working to really improve educational outcomes for students as they leave the TDSB and as they transition between schools and from panel to panel, elementary to secondary. So the transition navigators are building out an action plan currently, and we will continue to update SEAC as the year progresses. This month, there are a number of awareness events that are taking place. Learning Disabilities Awareness Month is October. October is also ADHD Awareness Month, and we've shared through our staff newsletter the ADHD fact sheet that was created by members of staff, as well as the ad hoc working group, ADHD working group. So we're still very much using that resource with school-based staff. And October is also Market Red for Dyslexia Awareness Month. So that concludes my leadership report. Thanks.
All right, let's take a list of questions, comments. I'm going to begin and say I'm actually really excited about those 2 grants from the province, and just want to comment on each briefly. With respect to the system navigators, I want to invite staff to let's set up a meeting on this with the K-12 working group, because I think we can give you some ideas. We'd like to hear how it's being done, but also we can give you some ideas that may assist you. The second is for the Let's All Be Friends program for kids on the autism spectrum. That is fantastic. I want to encourage the board to consider whether there's ways that it could be available for students with other disabilities where the same burden applies. I mean, there are studies that blind kids have lots of trouble in social settings, especially in school, simply because so much of the process of facilitating friends smiling across the room and so on is very visual. Lots of other disability groups will no doubt be able to say the same. Now, if the funding is exclusively tied to autism, then I understand you can't. If there's some flexibility, that would be great. And even if there's no flexibility in the sense that it's tied to autism, I would encourage the board to think about it as a pilot that you might borrow some of the ideas that might be doable at low or no cost in schools to assist kids with other disabilities or combinations of disabilities. Just some feedback for you.
Leo is on next on the list.
Thanks. Yeah, I just want to congratulate on the grants. It's really, really fantastic. Like, I really love the first one. All 4 of them are amazing. The 4th one is also great. But the fact that you put this through is really amazing. So congratulations on that. I think we have to recognize it. The question that I have is, these are pilots, so I'm imagining that it's just on a handful of schools. If they're successful, is there an opportunity to expand it to the rest of the board?
Thanks. That's a great question. And of course, it would be contingent on funding from the ministry, but we always look to, when we don't get funding, Leo, how can we continue some of the good practices if we've experienced success with them?
Thanks. So when I was excited that the autism program wasn't just for students in ISPs, so I really appreciate that. I guess that sort of leads to my question about the vocational program. When the resources are built, will those be, like I understand this maybe year 1 and you're using this ISP concentrated group to create a resource that will go to everybody? So there will be an opportunity to assess vocational skills for kids who don't choose an ISP. And then I guess I'm super curious about the transition navigators, and super excited because I think, like, I don't know if Aileen's on here, but I think she's been asking for that for 15 years. So she must be super excited. And so I'm just curious, will that be an educator? Will that be a person who's from community? Will it be a variety of professionals so that you have people who have a community experience plus educators? Because I could see how you'd want both of that. And at what ages will the families be able to work with these people? Because I'm sure you guys know as well as I do, starting at 20 isn't helpful. So like middle school, what age group are we looking at beginning, sort of having people thinking about that?
So those are great questions altogether, Nora. And when we receive funding from the ministry, they come with very strict parameters within which we have to work. So to answer your question, the 4 transition navigators are teaching staff. They're not meant to work with families. They're meant to build capacity of school-based staff so that they can work with the families.
Right.
I'll get to another question you raised in a minute, but we also find that there's a need, and our occupational therapy, physiotherapy staff do a lot of work around transitions, whether, again, it's transitioning from school to school or grade to grade or from school to post-secondary or work. And we do have some funds left that we will be using. It can't be used for anything else. They tell us exactly how much must be used for staff. So we will be getting an OTPT on the team as well. With regards to your point about we can't start this work with 20-year-olds, we have already started to go into every single secondary school that has ISBs or students who are approaching 21 so that they can start to work with that. But we've asked all of our secondary administrators to start that work in the 9th grade.
And just one clarification, I know it's not a whole bunch, but there's probably students in secondary that have not chosen ISPs that may have intellectual disabilities. How will those schools be kept in the loop about this?
So it's all, we're starting with the schools with ISBs because that's where we see our greatest need right now, but all secondary administrators get the same communication as those ones. We just go a little deeper with secondary administrators who have ISBs. So I referenced the system leaders weekly earlier, but we also go to family of schools meetings with superintendents where they're hosting their administrators, and we share that information with them as well.
This is going to sound crazy, but those administrators know those kids are in that building, right? Like high school gets big.
Sorry?
The principals that don't have an ISP but have a student in the regular class, I'm just conscious, will the principal know they're there?
Yep, they should be able to know that. Yep, and that's why we're doing our part, Nora, in terms of communicating with them. And I think we did that in September and October. We've already done it, and we'll continue to share those reminders with them on a monthly basis. So there are reports they can run and ways that they can get that data.
Thanks.
Okay, I think I'm the final speaker. Mine are more comments that will lead to some questions. You talked about post-21 and, you know, kind of transitioning that gap, and the gap is huge, as we all know. I'm looking at the grants here, and I know Leo said, oh, fantastic, and I think you got to look at the perspective. I think it is fantastic, absolutely. But if I look at, and I put on my hat for a moment, representing the Down Syndrome Association, and I look at the kind of the community, and that community pretty well covers virtually every exceptionality that the province has identified. There'll be people within the community with Down syndrome and other exceptionalities. I'm looking at this, and I see it talks about MID, ASD. There's no mention of developmental disability. And we know we talk inclusion. And I know we got the ONSIS data tonight that Nora has been after for years. And I just want to use that for a quick example. I'm looking at the elementary panel, a regular class. There's 7 children with withdrawal assistance that have developmental disability exceptionality. 7 children out of 651 with developmental disabilities. And I go to the high school. In a regular classroom in high school, somebody with a student with a developmental disability exceptionality, the number is 1. There is 1 student out of 494 students in a regular class with a developmental disability. And we're talking about post-21 when school's finished and these adults step into the community. They've never been in the community based on this. They've never been with other students that are typical, neurotypical. How do we expect them to succeed? I mean, this to me is a complete failure. And to use the word inclusion, I think I'm at a loss to even explain how that could even fit in there. And lastly, back to the comment to Craig, what are our, key performance indicators for the money we're investing in special education? And you talked about the pilot programs. How do we, move these out to the other students? Because there is a huge community here that I see in front of me that is completely underserved by the TDSB when we're talking about transition and their life after 21. So I leave it at that. I don't even know if you want to comment.
Sure, I will. So Richard, we've provided ONSYS data before, and we provided the exact same data last year. I'm happy to resend that data from last year.
No, I'm just looking at what we got now.
Yeah, we sent this last year as well. So you'll recall that last year there was a recommendation to follow the PAC on SEAC calendar, and that is where one of the items was provide SEAC with ONSYS data. So we started to do that when you all implemented the PAC on SEAC, and I've shared ONSYS data before. With regards to this, the grants are a lot of work, and staff apply for those grants on their own time, not part of their work time. And last year we applied, and the year before we applied, and like I mentioned earlier, we get 2 or 3, this year we got 4. Last year, the grants focused on DD. So we had developmental disability pieces. So it's whichever staff is applying and they're looking at the data where our needs are. So autism, for example, is our fastest growing exceptionality or area of need. So we've looked at putting in a grant to support students with autism. What I want to share about the ONSYS data is that when a student has multiple exceptionalities, so developmental disability and another, the data is captured, because this is not captured by our department, it's TDSB writ large. They capture the data based on they list the data based on the primary exceptionality. So they don't duplicate if a student has a developmental disability and autism and the primary on the IPRC statement of decision is developmental disability, they'll put that, they'll be captured in that category. So I hope that answers some of the questions.
I just think there's a big gap that we'll come back to at some other point, that there's a lot we need to do to help that community post-21, before they get to post-21.
Oh, absolutely, and we're working on that, Richard. And what I'm trying to say is that the ministry's funding for Transitions Navigator is really going to help us with that work. And we do not start when they're 20 years old. Right. We're starting, at least for now, in the 9th grade, but we're also encouraging our elementary, intermediate administrators to be having this information as well, so 7th and 8th grade.
And hopefully it'll be very beneficial to know how we're measuring the success. Thank you.
All right, anybody else, or can we, I think we're actually still on time. Trustees reports and then association reports. Any trustees reports? You don't have to report if you don't want to report.
I will send, actually, I just wanted to check in for another committee. We put together a calendar chart for the year, and it just has the forward list of when reports and things are going to come, because I've noticed that usually the trustee update at a number of different committees is the meeting agendas when I can get them. So meeting agendas are only posted the week before. So I can't, from that perspective, I can't give the committee a heads up of when a broader report is going to come, but a lot of the reports are scheduled for a particular time of year. So I will send, because annual reports, there's no time limit on giving feedback or input on them. They're presented at a particular time of year. So last week, staff presented the annual report on mental health, the mental health and addiction strategy, the literacy strategy for 2024 to 2028. And this is based on the new curriculum that came out, literacy curriculum that came out last year. And an academic pathways strategy. So this is supporting students from kindergarten to apprenticeship, college, university, and the workplace. And this is both ongoing work and looking forward in terms of strategies. These are ongoing things that'll have annual updates and reports. So I can send those, but what I wanted to ask, I created a spreadsheet for another committee that has a list of, I didn't list everything that the board is doing, For that committee, we looked at the reports and the policies that are coming up in the calendar or active right now, policy reviews that are active right now that the committee would be particularly concerned with. And so I am more than happy to do that for SEAC and get some staff input and stuff. It would just essentially be a reference table for the committee to look at. You'd be able to see rest of the board wise when particular reports are coming, to think about them in advance instead of after they're actually presented.
All right, thank you much. Any other trustee reports?
I see Trustee McLean is in the room.
Trustee McLean, you're not a member of the committee, but we're prepared to treat you as an honorary member of the committee. You can report or not report as you wish.
No, I just thank you for the opportunity, but I don't have anything prepared to share.
That's fine.
Always a pleasure to attend.
Thanks so much for taking the time to be here. Trustees have a very busy life, and taking the time to be here is really appreciated. Association reports.
I don't see any hands in the room.
All right,
I got one more, not association, but Parents and Caregivers as Partners Conference.
Oh, go for it.
Is November the 16th this year. It's on the Saturday from 10 a.m. to 1:15 p.m., so much shorter period of time. And the theme is Journey to Joy, Wellness, and Wholeness. When I printed this out this afternoon, it was 38 days, 18 hours, 1 minute, and 37 seconds away. That time is now getting closer. So we obviously want to get as many people out to that. It's an online virtual program. I know I did approach SEAC in the past this year, asking if anybody wanted to do a presentation from their particular association focused on these themes. I can't say that I've had a lot of interest or feedback at this point. There is a meeting tomorrow night, so if anybody is interested and can speak around this topic, and if there is room available, I'm happy to bring it forward tomorrow night in the meeting. Thank you.
All right, thank you much. Well, with that, just two wind-up points, one of which is please email Leanne to let us know if you can attend in person, or if not, if you can commit to attending online for the town hall on November 4th. Of course, nothing newsworthy is happening on November 5th, so all our minds will solely be on this stuff. And finally, feel free, if you are available, to tune in tomorrow night on the TDSB YouTube channel after 7:30. At some point, I get my brief moment to present our motion. Let's see how we do. Thank you all very much. We are going to end early.
We have a hand up, David.
We have a hand up early.
Yeah.
Hi.
Go for
Hi,
it.
it's Beth Dangerfield. I've had my hand up here just with regards to association updates.
Oh, sure. Sorry, we didn't know you. I thought we got
Yeah.
it. But go ahead.
No, it's okay. It's all right.
Absolutely. Let her rip.
Thanks. Thank you, David. And it's ADHD. Reese and I represent CADAC, Center for ADHD Awareness Canada, and October is ADHD Awareness Month. And so we sent out a sort of one-page kind of summary of the CADAC newsletter, which is an excellent free newsletter to sign up for if anybody's interested in that. ADHD, crosses over and overlaps with many other disabilities. We often see ADHD with, somebody with ADHD will have other diagnoses as well. And the conference, the ADHD annual conference, is coming up on November 2nd and 3rd in Oakville. And so I will be speaking at that, and there will be a number of other really interesting speakers. So it's just something for people to look at. This is all, again, on the one-page document that we sent out ahead of that. Leanne kindly sent out ahead of the meeting. We also sent out a document on the CADAC website. There's a number of resources that are extremely helpful. And one of those is a list of accommodations. One of the requests that we get a lot is to help with IEPs and help parents with like what accommodations and teaching strategies and things like that to put on IEPs. And so there's actually a list of those that we've shared the link to. And then also 2 free events we've included in the flyer as well. So yeah, we just wanted to, we don't say too much at these meetings, but given that it's ADHD Awareness Month, we wanted to take a minute and just recognize it because I can probably guarantee that it impacts a lot of us here in some way or another. So that is all. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much. Anybody else that I inadvertently left out? Nope. All right. Would anybody like to bring a motion to adjourn early, or do people want to just sit here for another 10 minutes so we go to 9?
I'll motion to adjourn, David.
Okay, be that way. I'm not going to even ask for a seconder or all in favor. See you all at the town hall on in November, and then back at our last SEAC meeting for the year in December. Thanks very much. Signing off.
Good night, everyone.